Hi guys, I hope you're doing really well. My name is Sarah and welcome to What the Horror, the channel where we talk about horror movies old and new. Also, welcome to another episode of Monsters 101, where we look at and study the monsters of horror, taking a look at the villains, ghosts, demons and creatures that haunt the screen. For this episode, we're looking at Bughuul, the antagonist of both the 2012 Sinister and its 2015 sequel, Sinister 2. Bughuul is a pagan deity who resides in a netherworld, but who can move into our world through the use of images. It is humanoid in appearance, but possesses the power to take on different forms, often that of an animal or insect. In Sinister, Bughuul manipulates children into committing acts of violence against their families in order to corrupt them and ultimately feed on their souls. Bughuul was the original concept of writer C. Robert Cargill, but the final version, which we see in Sinister, was created by Cargill and co-writer and director Scott Derrickson. The inspiration behind Sinister and its antagonist Bughuul came from a nightmare Cargill experienced after he'd watched The Ring, in which he found a film in his attic that depicted a family being hung from a tree. Cargill wanted to explore the idea of the boogeyman and make it his own. Originally, Bughuul was named Mr. Boogie, and more like a twisted Willy Wonka, both terrifying and captivating to children. Eventually though, Cargill and Derrickson would play down the captivating to children element and focused on how it manipulates the children instead. It was apparently important to the writers that Bughuul have no strong links to anything audiences may have heard of before, especially in terms of tying it to any one religion. That's why Bughuul is a pagan deity rather than a demon. The design for Bughuul actually came from a photographer. Back in the early research stages, Scott Derrickson and Robert Cargill scrolled through hundreds of thousands of photos on the photography site Flickr under the tag horror and eventually came across one of a ghoul labelled Natalie. They reached out to the photographer and bought the rights to the image for $500 and concept art credit. And according to an article in USA Today, other than designing Bughuul's outfit and making its hair longer and greasier, they, quote, didn't tweak the original image. Bughuul is known under the names Bughuul, Bughuul, the Eater of Children, and nicknamed by its victims Mr. Boogie. Bughuul is a pagan deity whose origins date back to ancient Babylonia, almost 4,000 years ago, a deity being a god, goddess, or a supreme being of divine status. The Babylonian Empire was one of the most powerful states of the ancient world and was located in the southeastern region of Mesopotamia. The empire is well known for its culture and for also housing one of the 7 wonders of the world, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Bughuul is one of the more obscure pagan deities as very little information remains on it. What information there is can be found only in fragments of stories that have survived over time, but physical writings and images are very few, with only an engraving, an old sketch from the Dark Ages and fragments of a deteriorating fresco remaining. It is believed by some cultures that it lives in another realm, a netherworld separate from ours, reachable only by ritual or sacrifice. In the past, any worship of this pagan deity would include a blood sacrifice and or the eating of children. Bughuul is known as the Eater of Children because of its need to feed off of children's souls to survive. Stories tell of differing ways in which Bughuul lures or tricks the children away from our physical world into its netherworld, where it consumes their soul over time. Part of the reason why very few writings and images of Bughuul remain is because they were destroyed out of fear and superstition. Early Christians believed that Bughuul lived within the images themselves, the images working as a gateway between its realm and our world. The early church believed that Bughuul would take possession of the person who saw the image and then compel them to do acts of evil. They also believed that Bughuul would abduct the viewer into the images themselves, and children were considered particularly vulnerable. Across the varying versions of Bughuul in different cultures, 3 things remain the same across all: a murdered family, a missing child, and some form of iconological totem such as an image, literature, or music. According to Dr. Stromberg in Sinister 2, this could be a thematic offering to Bughuul. Bughuul has some similarities to another pagan deity, Moloch. Moloch is mentioned in both ancient Hebrew and Greek texts, but is most frequently referenced in the Hebrew Bible, primarily in the book of Leviticus, and is often linked to child sacrifice. Bughuul, according to its creators, is the brother of Moloch. Bughuul desired to consume children like his brother and betrayed Moloch by mimicking his worship and child sacrifice rituals. When Moloch saw this betrayal, he became furious and shut Bughuul's eyes and mouth with ash for all eternity, so that he might never taste flesh again. Bughuul is humanoid in appearance, moving around on two legs. While its eyes and mouth are shut with ash, it does still have recognisable human features. It has long greasy hair and is dressed in a two-piece black suit and white shirt. Its skin has a slight sheen and decomposed colouring to it. While Bughuul spends most time in a humanoid form, it does appear to have the ability to take on different forms, usually that of an animal or an insect or arachnid, such as a spider, a snake, or a scorpion. While Bughuul isn't a demonic entity and rather a pagan deity, it does have something in common with demons, and that is that it haunts people and not places, or should I say, it hunts people. As I said earlier, Bughuul is the eater of children, and it is children that it hunts. After its brother Moloch cursed it by permanently sealing its eyes and mouth, Bughuul had to find another way to consume its prey. Instead of consuming their flesh, it would consume their souls. Some cultures believed that Bughuul not only fed on the children's souls, but on the corruption of innocence. As a hunter, Bughuul doesn't simply kill the children. It first plays with and torments them, eventually causing them to commit acts of violence before finally consuming them. There is a pattern to each kill, and while we don't have information on how the cycle began, we do know how the cycle continues. A family moves into a house which was the scene of the previous murder. While living there, one of the children of the family is singled out. They are then manipulated by the ghost children of previous victims to watch Super 8 film footage of previous murders. While the children may initially be unwilling, Bughuul feeds the child violent nightmares filled with feverish images of past murders and of the one they may potentially commit. The ghost children explain that watching the films makes the dreams stop, and once you've watched them all, you'll never have a nightmare again. Bughuul seems to single out emotionally vulnerable children, often those of emotionally absent or physically abusive parents. This is a tactic often seen with hauntings and possession, as it makes the target more receptive. While the dreams and films are wearing down the targeted child, the rest of the family is worn down by hauntings in the house created by both Bughuul and the ghost children, the aim being to make the family want to move and leave the house. Once the family has moved out into a new house, that is when Bughuul makes his final move in the cycle. The targeted child, who at this point has been broken down, murders their whole family in a violent way, thus creating the corruption of innocence which Bughuul likes to feed off. The children are aided by the use of a green liquid substance, I assume provided by Bughuul, that is then used to drug the family. As I said earlier, Bughuul needs a blood sacrifice, and that is what the murdered family acts as. And with the combination of the blood sacrifice and the drawing of its pagan symbol at the scene of the crime, Bughuul is now able to cross from its netherworld into our world through an image and abduct the child back into its nether. And finally, a new family moves into the scene of the last murders, and the cycle continues. Bughuul taking the children to his netherworld is him taking their life. The children are dead and now trapped in his world. Their only connection to our world is as a ghostly form. Whilst trapped in the nether, the children's souls are slowly devoured over time, and we see physical evidence of this in the decaying ghostly forms, the state of decay indicating the length of time the child has been trapped. The children, or Bughuul's victims, appear afraid of him. We see this in the first film when the ghost children run away when Bughuul appears. However, they are also evidently tied to him. After all, it is the ghost children that Bughuul utilizes to continue the cycle. One last aspect of the cycle that we must mention is the use of Super 8 films. As I mentioned earlier, one of the three things that is common across all of the stories of Bughuul is the form of a thematic offering or iconological totem. This is where the targeted child captures the murder on either audio or on film. In the 1970s, one of Bughuul's victims recorded the audio of their murders and then broadcast it on a rarely used band on a ham radio. But most commonly it is captured on film and added to the collection, which is then kept in a box that moves and appears from house to house. It is the targeted children themselves who records the film using a tripod so they can be in the footage as well, and as I mentioned earlier, the tapes play an important part in the manipulation of the next victim. You could also consider, though, them acting a bit like a trophy for Bughuul. It's something commonly seen with serial killers. They keep a trophy from each of their crimes. Either way, in Sinister 2, Dr. Stromberg describes them as aesthetic observance, murders being captured through art. Little is known about how Bughuul exists in its netherworld. All we know is that it is a different physical plane of existence to ours. We see evidence of this in Sinister when the children's ghosts move around at a much slower speed to us. We also know that while Bughuul doesn't make the films, it still appears to have the ability to manipulate physical objects in our world. Consider when Ellison destroys the Super 8 films by burning them on his barbecue, but after moving back to the family home, he finds the box of films in the attic completely undamaged from the fire. Bughuul is not a monster you can kill or destroy. We have neither the ability to reach it or harm it. Unfortunately, you're also unable to defeat it either, not without loss or consequences. If you remain in the house you live in, then you will continue to be targeted by Bughuul and the children's ghosts, potentially suffering from nightmares and from hauntings. If you move out of the house and leave, then murder of the family is inevitable, unless the chosen child refuses to kill or fails to kill their family, in which case we have learnt that that ends in the death of said child. However, what you can do is break the chain of Bughuul's influence. Any writings, recordings or images of Bughuul and the killings can be destroyed, and so destroying its access into our world. However, as we have learned, sometimes this isn't always the answer, so you could also go down the route of Deputy So-and-so and burn down the house that is the site of the most recent murders, preventing another family moving in and continuing the cycle. Thank you guys for attending Monsters 101. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. As always, let me know your thoughts on this week's monsters down below. What are your thoughts and takes on Bughuul? As for next week's episode, I am contemplating doing a deep dive into Sinister, making it a complimentary episode like I did with The Descent. But if you guys would like a break from Sinister, I can always push that back a week. Either way, let me know. But in the meantime, thank you as always for stopping by. I really do appreciate it. Take care of yourselves, and I will talk to you in the next episode. Bye guys.